Yes, and welcome back to the Sports Fix. I'm very happy to now announce that we'll be joined by the current Australia Paralympic Project Coordinator and the former head coach of Australia's Paralympic program. He was also the chef de mission at the 2014 Sochi Winter Paralympic Games. Chris Nunn returns to the Sports Fix. Nunny, great to have you back on. How are you?
I'm well, Ellis. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Likewise, Nunny. And let's just start off by talking about how you're going in your current role. You talked off air about all the plans that are building up towards what should be a pretty exciting event. So talk to us about how that's all going.
Yeah, look, Ellis, we've identified, particularly in parasport, the lack of opportunity for athletes during COVID to get classified, and that's integral to any component of parasport, is the ability to have an athlete classified so they're competing in the right group with other athletes who have a similar ability. And I'm really, really rapt to have been asked to head up a camp that's going to have 6 regions around the world and 22 countries coming to Birmingham in April for a classification event and competition for athletics and powerlifting. So, we're really, really rapt being able to get off the ground. Birmingham University have been terrific in supporting us, and the Commonwealth Games Federation and DFAT from Australia have put some money in to make sure this happens. So it's a world first and really fantastic opportunity to get some athletes classified, and particularly only a couple of years to the next Paralympics. So hopefully we're putting them onto a pathway for future success.
Paralympics in Beijing getting underway very soon, and that will be the main theme of our interview today. Now, let's move on to a geopolitical event that is unfortunately engulfing sport all around the world. Obviously, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it has the International Paralympic Committee President Andrew Parsons saying that Ukraine's athletes will face a mammoth challenge to get to the Beijing 2022 Paralympic Games after the Russian invasion of the country. As a follow-up to that, the IOC Executive Board has recommended that international sports federations ban Russia and Belarusian athletes and officials from competing in events, while the British Olympic Association and the National Olympic Committee of Germany have also since demanded the exclusion of those two nations. What do you make of all that?
Well, firstly, Ellis, I can say what I like because I don't work for anybody anymore. Paralympics Australia have got their own performance coaches and things in place, so I'm not bound by any restriction. Look, I'll start by saying this. The first thing that really concerns me is the impact on the athlete. These athletes have trained their butts off. My understanding is the Ukraine team was actually on the way to Beijing and have been stranded in an airport. I can't recall which one it is, but they're already in transit and having trouble getting flights to connect them through to get to the games. Now, that may have developed in the last few days, but I just feel for the athletes and coaches that have put in years of work to get to the level that's required to perform at this level, and then because you get political games being played in other countries or by other people, they're the ones that miss out. So I personally don't believe they should be banned. I think it should be a platform, sport should be a platform where we put politics aside and we get them played. Now, we know that's not the reality, but if I'm an idealistic, I want to see the athletes and coaches that have worked hard get to show their wares. It is devastating for an athlete to work their butt off and for whatever event miss the opportunity to compete. So that's where my heartfelt thoughts go to is the athletes and coaches. For the governments, the committees, all the people around the decision makers and playing politics. Again, I just wish they'd leave the sport alone. It's a different environment. And really, do you think Russia is concerned about what's going on at a games? They had a truce in place for the Olympics. Clearly, the message is, well, the Paralympics are now on, who gives a rat's? So they're not concerned about that at all, and have broken the truce that was in place to say that they wouldn't take any action until after the games. So that's all been thrown out the window. Is it right? Is it wrong? It's wrong that there's war. I believe it's wrong that these athletes are excluded. We should be showing these athletes and coaches empathy, and we should be showing that sport is above politics, and we want these athletes to compete. Any athlete worth their merit wants the best athletes from the best countries to turn up and test yourself against the best. If we start excluding people because of political reasons, you undermine the merit of the sport.
I just absolutely love the passion. Chris Nunn speaking to the former head coach of Australia's Paralympics program. He was also the 2014 chef de mission at the Sochi Games. Let's move away from the politics and into the Paralympic sphere, Nunny. We'll discuss the games and the athletes that we can look out for from an Australian perspective at least. We've got the head ski technician and assistant coach of the Aussie Paralympic team, Zali Offord, who is saying that the team morale is high ahead of the Beijing 2022 Games, which is obviously just music to our ears, and just a couple of the flag bearers that will be representing the Aussies at the Games is snowboarder Ben Tudhope and the alpine skier Sam Tate. What do you know about these two, Nunny, and are there any others in an individual sense that you're really looking forward to seeing at the Paralympic Games in Beijing?
Well, let me start with Benny Tudhope, mate. I actually I took Tuddy, well, we call him Tuddy, but Ben away on his first team for 2014. We actually had to get permission for him to compete because of his age. He was 14 years old, and to date, he is the youngest Paralympian ever to compete at the Winter Games, not just from Australia, but from around the world. Incredibly talented athlete, loves being on the snow. I think, first games we took him away was experience. The second one he went, and I think he probably would have been a bit disappointed with his results. This is his time to shine. He's been doing really well on the World Cup scene. He is an absolute superstar in terms of being grounded. His mum and dad are just the most fabulous people, and he's got two beautiful sisters. They've absolutely wrapped themselves around Ben to give him all he needs to be successful. He commits to his skiing, and you've got to remember, any athlete that goes from Australia, whether it be Olympic or Paralympic, there's so many months of the year you can't even train here in Australia. So they spend an incredible amount of time overseas, travelling together, training together, sometimes with Australian athletes, sometimes with other countries. But Ben is our best medal prospect at these games, and anything that comes his way will be well deserved. He's dedicated, he's disciplined. In fact, at the end of the 2014 games, I said publicly that if Australia had more Ben Tudhopes, it'd be a better place to live. He is just a terrific young man, and I wish him all the best. And I do believe he's our best medal chance, possibly our only medal chance at the Games. You mentioned Sam Tate. Sam came to sport, I think it was only 2013, 2014 from memory, that he had his accident. So he's relatively new to parasport, but he, like many of our Olympic athletes, has got a background in winter sport. Grew up with it. He knows snow. He knows what's required. And you've got to have a mentality. The way I describe Paralympic winter sport, Alice, is this. You take athletes up onto a cliff, you get them to look down the cliff, you put them on a pair of skis, and you say, I want you to get to the bottom as quickly as you can, and by the way, there'll be obstacles in the way. That's what winter sport is about. It is phenomenal to watch, incredibly technical, that people don't see from watching television. They can put wax on their skis. It's like putting ball bearings on the back of a board. It's just phenomenal, the skills and expertise that go into getting these guys down a hill. And I give it to the sit skiers. These guys are tied into a bucket with one ski on the bottom of it, and they've got to race down the hill. So, look, I really hope Sam gets a solid performance at these games. It's his first games, but at 30 years old, I think we can expect many, many more games ahead for him, because in parasport, the athletes, particularly the wheelchair athletes, they can have many, many, many years of serious level competition that you don't see from able-bodied athletes. Melissa Perrine's going around again. Mitch Gourlay's going around again. They're experienced skiers. They've been around on the world circuit for a while. Unfortunately, probably haven't got the results that we'd expect from athletes that of their longevity. But you never know. You get on the hill, you don't know what's going to happen on the day, and I know they'll be doing their best. They're very committed athletes, and we'll just have to wait and see how their events eventuate.
And just wanting to, I guess, provide some context as to how remarkable Paralympians are, particularly those in the Winter Games, talking about Ron Finneran. Now, I'm sure you know all about Ron. He actually had polio as a child, and that affected both legs and his arm. So what a legacy he has in the Australian Olympics community, being the first ever Winter Paralympian from Australia.
Ronnie is one of the legends of parasport. There's no question of that. He is, in fact, there is he really drove hard with the New South Wales Department of Sport and Rec many years ago to set up a ski facility and a ski lodge in Jindabyne where the athletes could come and stay, use the facilities that were totally accessible, and then get up on the hill and train. In fact, that lodge is now called Finsco's for obvious reasons. Warren Finneran, Finsco was his nickname, so it's called Finsco's. And every year there's numerous number of athletes go up there and try the sport for the first time. But Ronnie's an absolute legend in Paralympic sport in Australia, former president of the Australian Paralympic Federation, it was at the time, and has done an enormous amount of work with politicians, both at a federal level and at the state level, to ensure that Winter Paralympians have the chance to be successful on the snow. So we will always be indebted to the work and the commitment that Ronnie Finneran showed to winter sport in Australia.
Great stuff, Chris Nunn. And as we wrap up, we'll just reflect on your time in Sochi in 2014. You were the chef de mission, obviously, of the Australian Paralympic team. You must have some great memories from that time. So talk to us about it, Nunny.
Look, I think the interesting thing, Alice, was just the facade that was Sochi. You drove down the street and it had been a purpose-built facility. In fact, the scariest thing I found out, literally on the way home, we were coming down the gondola for the last time, and I was talking to a security guy there who spoke some reasonable English, and I said, how do you feel about the games? He goes, I am very relieved. And I said, why is that? He said, the gondolas have stood their time. I said, what do you mean? He said, we're going to dismantle the gondolas because they are built on shale. We were hoping they would not fall down during the games. And I was just floored. Like, you've had the best athletes in the world up there for the Olympics and Paralympics. And it was just like, wow. So it wasn't as authentic as it looked on television. The highlight for me was, as the chef de mission, to be able to go to Benny Tudhope as a 14-year-old and ask him to carry the flag at the closing ceremony. We've had a couple of athletes that have won medals, but to me, the history of those games, well, we actually lost an athlete on the hill 10 days before the games. To go into a games with everybody mourning the death of an athlete was pretty traumatic. But Benny was the shining light, and for me, he was the glue that held the hope of the future. And thus, as I said, he's a bit of a favourite of mine. To be able to get this 14-year-old kid to carry our flag as the future of our sport, I think now we're 8 years down the track, and as I said earlier, he is the light and hope of this team in terms of a medal performance. That for me will remain a highlight of my life, to ask this young kid to carry the flag. It's a moment he'll never forget, moment I'll never forget, and incredibly proud to be part of.
Chris Nunn, it's always great speaking to you. You're across so many things, and very much hope that you enjoy all the action coming up in Beijing when it comes to the Paralympics being showcased. Nunny, great to have you on the flow again. Take care of yourself.
Good on you, Alice, and good luck to everybody, and enjoy the